Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Zombies on the Block by Mike Evans, narrated by Tristan Morris. People can surprise you. The strong can cower, the weak can have the heart of a lion. When true survival is at stake, there is no better time to see a person's worth than in the moments leading up to what could be the continuation or end of their life or those whom they care for. Chapter 1. Mike, 7 a.m., Ankeny, Iowa. Emily did her best to try and let her husband Mike sleep, but there was a tinge of annoyance that he got to sleep in until 7, and literally just had to walk the kids out to the elementary bus at the corner, and then could go back in the house, drink his coffee slowly, and enjoy his day. It wasn't fair that he got to have the stomach flu. She debated that maybe she'd call in sick, but who was she kidding? She had projects and deadlines, and knew if she stayed home, Mike would make her sick too. Having 2 children meant at least one adult needed to be healthy if they were going to have a fighting chance, else they would be outnumbered. The project she was working on wouldn't see the light of day for another 6 months, but if she didn't go to work, she wouldn't have any hope of having any real time off for the foreseeable future. She watched her husband sleeping, his chest rising slowly, and decided when the weekend came, he would get the honor bestowed upon him to go and deal with the kids. He wouldn't care, because he was rarely a guy who slept in. Most days he got up early to work on his projects before he went to work, because he was crazy, or because he loved his family more than his sleep and wanted to provide a life that was better than a guy who didn't have more than a sad year of college to show for his education. All of this was on the off chance that he was done with the violent sickness he was dealing with at the moment. There were 3 different strains going around, she thought, and she prayed he had the quicker of them. Although with the horrific noises coming out of the bathroom, she wondered at times if maybe he had all 3 of them. Emily crawled into bed for only a second, leaning just far enough to give his bald head a kiss, and headed out to the hallway. Harley, who she could only tell was awake by the wagging tail, was waiting for her invitation to head downstairs with her favorite person in the world. Harley tore around the corner. She was a lab who ate enough for 2 and had 2 patches of black fur over each of her eyes, black ears, and a spot on her butt. Emily watched as the dog raced for the kitchen. Both kids had already gotten dressed and headed downstairs, and were going to town on their Pop-Tarts. She smiled, happy that their legs still had a little under a foot before their feet would be able to touch the floor while they ate. Emily looked at the family wall portrait. Her oldest son, Tony, who was 6 feet tall, towering over her by more than half a foot. They'd had him when the 2 of them had nothing, but because of that, she thought, it made her take time to appreciate the children at the table all that much more. She was sure that the children, who were a beautiful mixture of looks between the 2 of them, were still little enough to be cuddled. It saddened her to think one day they would be the big kids and her son would be able to wrap his arms around her and be taller than her just like his idol Tony already was. The 2 of them were laughing hysterically, with red cherry and bread mixed together falling out of their mouths. Harley was on the floor growling at the old man of the family, Rusty the Wonder Dog. He was going to town beneath Lily, who was famous for the best spot in the house for food. Emily wanted to make sure their laughing was for the good of evil. "Hey kids, what's so funny?" Lily laughed, and Jake threw his hands up in the air, waving his head as well, and yelled, "Grandma Evans said I'm a coconut head." "What did she call you?" "Grandma Diane called me a coconut head." "Why?" Jake, the 12-year-old, shrugged, and his sister Lily laughed so hard that milk shot out of her nose. Emily took a towel to the 10-year-old and wiped at her cherry-wet milk face mess. Lily couldn't stop laughing, and Emily bent down, giving her a kiss on the forehead. When her face was less scary-looking, Emily looked up at her son, who had one eyebrow hunched up, looking hauntingly like The Rock. He held her gaze, fighting the corners of his mouth from breaking out into a smile. When he couldn't hold it any longer, he said, "Grandma Evans called me a coconut head." With that, he fell off his seat by the table, holding his belly, erupting in a fit of laughter. Emily bent down on the ground, giving him a kiss on the forehead. "I need to get to work. I'm going to let Harley and Rusty out before I go. When the timer on the microwave goes off, can you get your dad up?" The kids gave a thumbs up, and Lily said, "You better get Rusty Dog out or he's gonna pee on the floor, Mom." Rusty, the little orange and tiger-striped dog, was doing his "I gotta pee and poo" dance by the door. She grabbed his collar, letting Harley, who wouldn't leave the backyard for anything unless the neighbor men and women were out, follow. She hooked Rusty up on his leash and let him run out into the backyard. The old beagle had a few years left at best, they hoped, and as he ran, he squeaked. He was too old to use his hips and leg muscles without letting some farts make their way out. The kids, of course, erupted in a fit of laughter. Emily checked their backpacks, making sure their planners were signed and that they literally just needed their dad to walk them down to the stop. Emily looked around, making sure she had everything she needed. There was something she was forgetting, because that was a mother's life, taking care of yourself last. "You guys be good for Dad. He still feels horrible. I think he was puking in the bathroom almost the entire night." "Wow, that's really gross," Jake said. "I got to listen to it all night. It made me want to puke a little too. I'm glad that I got all of us a flu shot." Lily questioned, "Why didn't Dad get one again?" "Oh, because he is a 35-year-old toddler who decided to take 4 hours of sick time in October, and instead of going to see Dr. Kopp, he went out on a 4-hour motorcycle ride with Michael next door, which is probably why he's as sick as a dog. Michael is lucky he hasn't gotten it too." "Yeah, but couldn't Mackenzie take care of him? You know, because she's a nurse," Lily said. "He was supposed to go to the doctor that day too, and with baby Marin he probably should have. Do you want me to stay home and take care of Dad?" "Lilybell, you have school. Mrs. Campoff would miss you if you didn't come in today, wouldn't she?" Jake cut Lily off before she could respond. "Yeah, because she's like a suck-up." "I'm sorry that I like to read, Jacob. It isn't my fault. I mean, sorry. Books are better than Minecraft." "Minecraft is awesome, Lillian." Emily caught Rusty by his collar, undoing the hook so he didn't choke himself out once he ran for the couch. She patted him on the rear and then gave both kids another quick kiss. "You are both awesome. Here, let me put some tea tree oil on your heads. The last thing we want to do is have another bout of head lice. I hate bugs, and we have all the laundry we need already." "I love our laundry, Mom. It makes the best pile of clothes to jump on." "Just let me put this on, and don't forget to get your dad up. I don't like you two walking down to the bus stop by yourselves." "We aren't babies, Mom," Lily explained. "Unfortunately for you, you are always going to be my babies. I love you guys. You have a good day at school, and remember, no TV this morning. Jake, you make sure that the two of you are ready for school when that timer goes off. Any questions?" Jake raised his hand in the air. Emily nodded, and Jake asked, "What's for supper tonight?" "Lily has fencing, and you have soccer, so we are doing pizza." Lily raised her hand and joined Jake. Jake kept his up, and Emily nodded. "Are we going to do Little Caesar's pizza?" "Nothing but the best for you two kids. Don't forget to get your dad up when the timer goes off. Just make sure that you pay attention to the timer. If you miss the bus and he has to drive you up to school, he's going to be very unpleasant." Lily gave a thumbs up as she finished off her Pop-Tart and started to chug her juice box. "You can count on me, Mom. I'm going to make sure he's awake so we don't get in trouble at school." Emily said, "I'll call you to check and see that you made it on the bus. Or I guess I'll call your dad." "Mom, you know, if you got me a new fancier cell phone that I could download apps on and not just have one to, like, call people and get texts, they have a sale on—" Emily killed his comment before he had a chance to start it. Every spoiled brat at Ankeny had a cell phone. Most of them, she'd seen from school events, were nicer than her own. The spoiled children had Apple phones, which was one brand she'd never had the chance to have for herself. They weren't poor, she knew, but the idea of getting Mike to splurge $1,000 on a phone was slim. He would lose his shit for sure. Emily took a look around and did the sign of the cross that Mike would get up, get them on the bus, and get himself enough rest so that he could get over this crap and get himself back to work and feel better by the weekend. Chapter 2. The two kids gave it a 30 count after the garage door opened and closed. Jake ran to the window. Harley, as usual, was already sitting up next to the window. Her white snout had the curtains moved out of the way, and she was watching her mom drive away. The two watched as the white Ford Escape disappeared down the street. Lily looked at Jake, who was already thinking what she was going to say. "Does Dad have any of my Girl Scout cookies left in his secret hiding spot?" "No more than 2 or 3 cases, I bet. He's your best customer. I don't know anyone who likes to eat cookies at night as much as Dad does." "I don't know. Grandpa Denny sure likes to eat some cookies at night as long as he gets his shot first." "Lily, Grandpa Denny isn't here right now, and if we don't get moving, we aren't going to have time to get cookies before we need to get Dad up. Why are we still talking?" Jake didn't respond. He understood the severity and importance of a few Thin Mint cookies before they had to wake him up. If they planned it just right, they could get a ton of cookies, and from there they could get their teeth brushed and the evidence would go down the bathroom drain. Jake jumped up to the counter, pulling himself up, and crawled up atop of the fridge. He opened the small door that his dad didn't think he knew about or that he could reach. Of course, he was wrong. Jake opened it, his eyes growing large and bright as the beautiful sight of boxes representing every color Girl Scout cookie that money could buy sitting in front of him. He said, "What kind do you want?" "I don't know, but let's start with the s'more cookies. I love marshmallows, like, a lot." Jake pulled the brown package out and dropped it out into her hands, already outstretched and ready. She took them, running back to the table where she pulled out the entire package and began inhaling the cookies, one after another. Jake grabbed the Thin Mints and tossed them down on the counter and didn't even waste time with getting to the table. He took 5 Thin Mints and started eating them 2 at a time. They knew that they were playing with fire, eating their dad's cookies. However, they almost never got the opportunity to be unparented at their ages, and this was like Christmas for their mouths. When the timer went off, the two of them looked at each other, faces covered with cookie evidence, and that "oh shit" feeling raced through their tiny bodies. Jake chewed with a purpose, getting it down, and chugged the milk that was left from breakfast. Lily and Jake ran up the steps, pausing at the door. The two of them knew that their dad was a fist thrower when he was touched in his sleep. He was just like his dad, jumpy all the time. Mike was just a bit less jumpy, mostly because of his anxiety meds, which helped calm him out. Lily and Jake looked at each other, saying, "Not it," at the same time, and "Jinx! Jinx blackout!" They immediately held out their palms for rock, paper, scissors. Lily whispered, "Best out of 3. 1, 2, 3, double rocks. 1, 2, 3, double scissors. 1, 2, 3, double rocks." If the two kids were allowed to curse, they'd have been doing it right now. Lily and Jake stared at each other, deadlocked, both intent on not being the one to do it. Lily said, "You are older. You have to wake him up. I'm older, and that means you need to listen to me. If you don't, I'm going to tell Mom about your cookies. If you tell Mom about my cookies, I'll tell her about your cookies." The siblings stood in stalemate. Each of them were trying to figure out what and how to do it. There wasn't a solution to this, which either of them liked the idea of. Lily sat for just another minute before the solution came to her. She whispered down the stairs, feeling guilty before it ever happened. Lily called for Harley, because Rusty was too fat and old to make it up onto their king-size bed. Lily sat on her knees, pretending to have something in her hand, and when Harley rounded the corner, she pretended to toss a treat onto her parents' bed. Harley was not bashful, and she lived for belly rubs and food. Always food. This was a case where she thought she would get food. She leapt into the bed, not considering the fact that Mike was still in bed. He usually left at 6 in the morning. This was not a normal day, and she realized the error in her ways mid-jump when she saw Mike with a light sweat and a horrible-sounding wheeze coming from his mouth. The dog looked like a cartoon character attempting to change her direction mid-air, attempting to stop and go another way. Harley landed square on Mike's stomach with her front 2 paws, and her rear paws landed on her dad's balls. Mike tried to scream, but the pain thriving in his testicles and the worst feeling of soreness from a night of dry heaving was an unimaginable Molotov cocktail of pain exploding from his nether regions and his ab muscles, which were hiding well underneath a small layer of fat. He tried to sit up, but realized the benefits from it were greatly outweighing the pain. Harley absolutely saw the error of her ways. She dropped to the bed and army-crawled off of it, almost looking like a snake slithering away. Mike waited a minute before he sat up and then moaned as he rose. The 2 kids had a nervous energy, and they walked around the corner like they hadn't been waiting for the dog to do the dirty work. Harley came sprinting past the 2 kids and raced down the carpeted steps. Jake, without much believability, said, "Hey, Dad, we're just coming to get you up. You feeling any better? You still look like crap." Mike was going to answer, but Lily said, "Yeah, he does. I'm glad I don't look like Dad. He doesn't look very good. Are you gonna live, Dad?" Mike collapsed back into the bed, his abs and balls still pulsating. He thought they were probably 40 or 50 times their normal size, because he was pretty sure that they were in his throat. Jake said, "Our bus is coming soon, Dad, and Mom said to wake you up, but it looks like Harley beat us to it." Mike didn't say anything. He just held up his index finger, and Jake stopped immediately. It was quite apparent that they needed to give their dad just a second to collect his thoughts. He pulled the blankets back, slowly reaching around on the floor for a pair of shorts, and grabbed a wrinkled Spider-Man shirt from the floor, getting up slowly and wobbling at first. This wasn't going to be a pleasant experience. He kept a hand on the bed, walking slow. Both kids kept an eye on him, and both looked extremely nervous. Mike got up to the steps, looking down, and felt his world begin to spin. Something he'd experienced a lot of over the last few days. They looked like they were a mile long. Jake and Lily both stayed where they were. The Evans household was for sure not one that was friendly to germs. Mike had a running joke each time a kid sneezed or coughed about, "Bless you, don't get sick," to which both kids would always say, "It is just a sneeze, Dad," if it wasn't for the intense fevers that the children had when they were just little kids. Then Mike probably wouldn't be so die-hard about trying to keep the 2 of them healthy. Mike wiped the sweat from his palms and put a shaky foot on the first stair, testing his knees and leg muscles to make sure everyone was going to get along and work as a team. He started to take the steps slowly, counting all 16 of them, and feeling quite lucky to not have tripped and died on them. The alarm for the bus was going off outside, and they had a phone bus tracker app that told them when the bus was close. It was something to make sure the parents of Ankeny could get their kids to school on time. Jake held the door open, backpack in hand, and Lily ran out, jumping in the air off the 2 brick steps, doing a flying sidekick. The kids had been enrolled with Mike for Taekwondo for the last few years, and any opportunity they had, they used it. She landed, never slowing down, and ran halfway down the sidewalk before he was even out the door. Jake looked like he was doing the pee-pee dance. "Do you need to drain one off? I don't know if I can drive you if you are late. I don't have to pee, but you're going to make me late." Mike wasn't any better when he was running late, and knew it drove his son towards the brink of insanity. He put a hand on the screen door's handle, keeping his balance, and motioned for Jake to run off. They could see the bus coming up Branwood Drive. Jake got his legs pumping, cutting across the front yard, high-stepping it in a few spots from the poop that needed to be picked up. Mike was confident the boy-child would not scrub the poop off his shoes, so he was quite happy that he was going out of his way to not acquire any shit on his shoes. When he rounded the corner, there was a van coming down the street. Jake didn't look and sprinted into the street, not paying attention. Mike let go of the door, seeing some very horrible things about to happen to his son. Lily was sitting at the stop sign, trying to get her brother's attention, screaming, but he was focused on his task at hand and didn't know that his life was coming to an end if things were not drastically changed in the next few seconds. Mike took off in a pathetic attempt at a dead sprint. His son started to get blurry as he got closer, but Mike shook it off, unsure if he was going to pass out or if he was going to accomplish his goal. The idea of his baby boy getting hit by a car and him not saving the boy was fueling him and turning his stomach all at the exact same time. Jake saw Mike coming at the last second before he grabbed the boy. The van was so close that Mike could see the dead bugs that had splattered and dried onto the van's grill over an Iowa spring. Mike saw the woman driving the van, and she didn't look to be in her right mind. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hair pointing out in 50 directions, and she had a sweat going. Mike thought there was a very strong chance she was just a mother who was on her way to take some kids somewhere, or was running late and didn't have the sick time to call in to her job. At this moment, Mike was perfectly content blaming this woman for every bad thing potentially going to happen if he didn't succeed. He went off his right foot and tackled Jake, sending the two of them up into the air and landing hard in the grass. Mike thought when he struck the ground it might as well have been concrete. He extended his left arm to slow his fall down. He curled, pulling Jake into him so that the boy would take the least amount of impact possible. Jake still cried out when they hit. Mike looked down at his foot, which felt like it was on fire. He didn't know what had happened until he saw a Chevy symbol embedded into his ankle. "That fucking bitch hit me with her van. What the hell is wrong with her? She didn't even slow down." Jake didn't cry, but he absolutely looked like he was going to. He saw his dad's bright red ankle and a small trickle of blood coming from the Chevy symbol currently imprinted in his dad's foot. "I didn't see her, Dad. I'm sorry. Mike ignored his ankle, sitting up, putting Jake on the ground, and looking over him. He ran his hands down his back and side and chest and shook the grass out of his hair. "You're fine. I'm just glad you were okay. Does anything hurt really bad?" Jake shook his head no, and his eyes went wide when he saw the van screech across the bus, leaving a red stripe from its paint. Mike remembered he had one more kid to go and save. He held Jake by the hand, not content to let him be by himself for one more second. He was still feeling like hell warmed over, but the feeling of knowing he still had a son who was alive made everything completely worth it. Mike looked both ways this time, making sure they were safe. He hobbled on his ankle, testing how much weight he could place on his Chevy foot, which wasn't too much at the moment, but it felt better every second. He twisted his ankle before, and this wasn't that feeling. He watched the van as it crossed through the stop sign, a shower of sparks coming from the bus and the van scraping one another. The van never so much as hit its brake lights. The van crashed through a stop sign on the opposite side of the street, and the question of if the woman had been wearing her seatbelt was answered immediately. She crashed through her windshield, sending glass everywhere in front of her. She missed the light pole, and unfortunately for her, she skidded on the sidewalk. Mike could see even from 40 feet back, that she had skidded every inch on her face. The woman, amazingly, got up immediately, no hesitation at all. She didn't show any effort to get up either. The strange woman was on her feet in under 2 seconds and ready to go. John, a retiree who drove buses during the school year, leaned up in his seat and watched this from the driver's seat as it began to unfold. He looked at the 15 young faces staring at him, and then back at the woman, who seemed oblivious that she'd been in a horrific crash and that she'd just scraped her face, chin, elbows, palms, and anything else which hit the concrete sidewalk. John waved the kids to get on to the school bus. Lily didn't know any better, nor did anyone else, including the adults. They climbed on quickly, one at a time. John hit his seatbelt, getting up once all the kids were in, and started walking down the steps and out of the bus. John yelled from across the street, "Hey, ma'am, are you all right? Do you need me to call an ambulance? Ma'am, can you hear me? Are you all right? You might be in shock after that. I don't think you should be up on your feet." The woman took a step backward, turning around, and seemed to all at once recognize John and hear his words. She didn't answer, though. At least, not with words. She bent at the knee and took off in a full-on sprint towards John. Her face was shredded. She had pieces of torn flesh hanging down from her cheeks, and one slice on her cheek was so deep you could see her bones. John watched, unable to believe that she was able to move, let alone run. He turned to run back into the bus, but knew he couldn't lead her to the children on the bus, and with her speed, there was no way he would be able to outrun her. John did the only thing he could think of, and took off around the corner of the bus. He looked over his shoulder and could see that the woman had not lost interest in him. John was almost 70 years old, so he didn't have much of a chance of getting away from her. He was trying to think quickly on his feet, and tried as gracefully as his old body would grant him to drop to the ground and roll beneath the bus. John sat there for a second, trying to be quiet. He didn't want to look left. He didn't want to see if there were still feet waiting for him, looking, hunting. John finally looked, massaging his chest and trying to not have a heart attack. He screamed as loud as he possibly could. He didn't see feet. He saw the woman, her eyes staring directly into his like he wasn't a fellow human, but a meal she very much was salivating for. The woman bear-crawled beneath the bus effortlessly, and John attempted to roll to the other side, trying to get away from her. He rolled, feeling fear, but hopeful that he was going to make it. He could feel the sun on his face as he neared the edge of the bus. He saw Mike standing there with Jake. Mike had the boy behind him, and he had his hand out to pull John up to his feet. John smiled, his face full of fright and pain. It had taken less than a minute for him to break out in a sweat. Mike gripped tightly onto his hand and pulled. His balance wasn't worth a shit at the moment, but he tried to pull him out from beneath the bus. John's smile instantly vanished as a pulling came from the privacy beneath the bus, and he grimaced as her teeth bit into the rear of his back just above his kidneys. John's grip loosened as the pain grew, and Mike watched his face begin to grow paler, and as it did, purple veins seemed to appear from nowhere. Mike studied his face, feeling like there was CGI going on or something. A small set of hands on his back brought him around, and he realized he still had his son behind him, and he was very much in danger. John's eyes turned pus-filled and cloudy, and a second later, the soft blue iris and sclera the man had were now as black as night. Mike let go of the man. Whatever was happening was no longer natural, and saving him was off of his radar. Mike pointed to the house and yelled, "Jake, run to the house! Get inside! Go do it now!" John's screams dissipated.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?